Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. I hope everybody's doing well this afternoon for you, this evening for me here in Cairo, Egypt, mashallah. And thank you, Sister Madam, mashallah, barakallah fikum. Thank you for everything and all that you do to help, and you and the other staff at Beyond Chai to make these webinars possible, mashallah. Yeah, this is our third webinar, mashallah, alhamdulillah. And we hope that for those of you that have attended the others or heard the others, have received some benefit, because the idea is for it to be benefit, Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that reminders benefit the believers. So this is just to remind you about things that, inshallah, that will be helpful and beneficial for those of you that are seeking to get married, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, which is a wonderful thing, which can be a wonderful thing if we approach it with the right mindset. And a lot of what I like to talk about, and we like to talk about in these webinars, about mindset, just the mindset. So yeah, so tonight we're talking about the long game. It's just a matter that I've been married over 4 decades. That's a long time. Yeah, the long game. And as I kind of jokingly said in the first webinar, we've managed to stay married this long without killing one another, right? So something to say for that. At any rate, so we want to talk about some things that can help, inshallah, for longevity, for longevity. And the kind of the subtitle, excuse my my little coughing here. The subtitle here is Beauty's Only Skin Deep, because we're going to talk a lot about that, because really we want to talk about beyond just looks, although that's very important. And we're going to talk about that, how, in a minute or two here. But I like the title, Beauty's Only Skin Deep, only because it takes me back. It takes me back to the 60s and the 70s before I became Muslim. And when I fancied myself as a singer, by the way, I say fancied myself. I'm not sure that many other people did, quite frankly. But and there was this song called "Beauty's Only Skin Deep." Most of you, I'm sure, weren't even born, or probably weren't even being thought about at that particular time. But it's a song. Well, I don't want you to go look at the lyrics, but that talks about beauty. It's just not, there's more to life. There's more to the individual than just beauty, and talks about love and caring and all of that kind of a thing. Okay, so yeah, I used to fancy myself as a singer. And just jokingly, I tell everybody now who, you know, is aware of that. I said, well, now, and maybe even then, but now when I try to sing in the shower, the water stops. So you kind of get an idea of, you know, where I am with that. At any rate, but yeah, I was a professional singer in my day of sorts for a short-lived time. By the way, this is just an aside. We'll get into the topic here in a minute. To be professional at anything, in this particular in the arts, it means that somebody pays you at least once. So I was paid at least once, to do some singing. All right. So what we want to talk about is that long game, the long game in mind. What is the end game? What is the longevity here? How do you choose a mate? How do you choose a spouse that will allow you, that inshallah, by the grace and help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they'll allow that marriage to flourish and to last a long time? Because we should be, when we're getting married, working towards getting married, be thinking about down the road. What is the end? And we're going to talk about that on the next slide here, about what is the end in mind, keeping the end in mind. But here we're going to be talking about, just for a few minutes, again, that long game, and choosing good character over temporal traits. And I want to tell a little story. If there are any Arabs in the audience, you've heard this before, I'm sure, probably many times. But anyway, I'll share it again. I understand it's quite true. I understand it is true, so I'm going to share it with you. So it is said that there was a young Egyptian man. So he was Egyptian, that he worked in the Gulf. All right. And as a young man, he was just there working like many people around the world. They go to the Gulf countries and, they seek employment. And after a while, he, began to feel a need to get married. So he contacted his father in Egypt and he said, Dad, listen, I'm ready to get married now. And so his father would say, well, come on home and, let's see if we can find, and we'll meet. He said, no. Now, I want you to choose. I trust your judgment. Okay, you probably know where this is going. So the father did. The father found someone for him to marry, and they actually agreed to marry. So the boy went home to wherever he was in Egypt, I don't know, maybe in Cairo, wherever, and he met the young lady. And when he met the young lady, she wasn't quite, you know, his liking from a physical standpoint. It wasn't what perhaps he would have chosen. But he said, here, good, no problem. My father chose this, you know, this lady for me. So I'm going to go through with it. And so the wedding went off. So it is said that, during the honeymoon period at some point, late one night or early one morning, his bride woke him up and she said, sweetheart, will you lead me in tahajjud? And he said, sure, okay, sure, why not? So he led his new wife, his bride, in tahajjud. And he said, and he's the one that the young man is telling the story, and he said that after leading his wife in tahajjud and making the salams, he turned around and he saw the most beautiful lady he'd ever seen. Now, alhamdulillah, again, I'm told this is a true story. But what did that indicate? When he went on to explain that there was something of that her asking him, to lead me into Hajj, obviously touched him because, you know, praying to Hajj is a big, big, big deal. Something that is really meritorious, something that's really loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah actually says that if you want something from me, if you want, the best time to ask it is in the last third of the night. Again, this is tahajjud, to get out of your bed and to ask. So obviously, this young lady was accustomed to making tahajjud, and that was something that he valued. Obviously, he said, "Wow." So this brings me to something here, to the good point. When you are considering getting married, one of the things that you have to think about, and we have to think about as Muslims, is, you know, can this person help me get to Jannah? Because that's ultimately where we're going to end up. Can this person help me get to Jannah? Will this person remind me? This young bride reminded her new husband that, hey, we should pray tahajjud. We need to pray tahajjud. So that was something about her character. So this is something that we have to think in mind. We have to keep in mind here is that number one, the most important thing, and I think most young people, I believe that, let me put it another way. I don't believe that many young people really think about this aspect about Jannah. Can this person help me to get to Jannah? And the person's looks alone, well, the person's looks by in and of itself is not going to help you get to Jannah. That's for sure. But it's those other characteristics and traits that will help you to get to Jannah, inshallah, bismillah. So this is what you have to be concerned about. Here's another thing that to think about is about children. Who is going to be the mother of my children? Who's going to be the father of my children? Do we think about that? That has to be thought about. Because that might not be the most handsome man. That might not be the prettiest woman. It may not be. That may not be. Because again, beauty is only skin deep. There may be other characteristics and traits that knight in shining armor, that veil of the ball, that lady, that other characteristics and traits that may not be the best thing for raising children in the way that maybe you want to raise them. It's all about, again, what you are looking for and what you're desiring in that case. So these are things to consider as we're considering the whole thing about attraction. Now, so let me now take a step back, because I don't want you to say, oh, this brother's trying to say that looks don't matter. I'm not saying that at all. Actually, in Islam, it does matter. We know that the well-known hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that a man marries for four reasons. One is for beauty, one for social standing, and one is for the wealth, and the last one is for her deen, and that's, of course, is the best of reasons. So beauty is in there, isn't it? And the Prophet ﷺ would tell his companions that, when you get ready to marry a woman, take a look at her. Now, understand what that meant, that he was to look at her face, because the women would, most of the women would be veiled. So men wouldn't know what she looked like. Men, of course, obviously would be easily to be seen. So the woman would know what he looked like. So he said, take a look at her, so that, and if she's pleasing to you, and again, didn't say if she's beautiful, if she's pleasing to you, then alhamdulillah. But what is the best? The best thing is the character. It is absolutely the character. So this is something that I'm just pointing out here that I think that has to be really, really, really taken in consideration in terms of the long game. And what is the long game? The long game, again, this is Jannah. The long game is raising children, raising someone to help you raise children that they're going to be good Muslims because we're Muslims. Alhamdulillah. So these are the things that we really need to think about. And again, yes, the person should be pleasing to you. The person should be pleasing. But does the person have to be, you know, again, the knight in shining armor, or, Mr. Hollywood, Bollywood type, or lady or man, whatever image that we have in our minds? And this is another issue and another problem that I think that we have as young people, and particularly living in the West, and all of these things, and not even just living in the West now, because of the social media and again the Hollywood and Bollywood and the movies and all of that. We get these certain images of what a pretty woman looks like. But a pretty woman and a handsome man is not just from their physical characteristics and their physical features. That pretty man, or that handsome man, and that pretty, beautiful woman, what those physical features should be beautified are those other traits that last. Because again, back to the song, beauty is only skin deep. And it doesn't last. Because think about this, no matter how beautiful she is, no matter how handsome she is, look at me now. If you go on to if you were going to my WhatsApp page, some people say, who is that? Because I have a picture of me when I was I don't know where it was from. One of my daughters dug it up from somewhere. Either it was first year in college or when I was leaving high school. I don't look like that now. Someone said, no, that's a handsome young man. I was then, maybe. I don't think many people are going to say that now. My point is, you get my point. We change and things change. So we don't marry for those. We shouldn't be marrying strictly for those reasons. So if you see someone, and I like to use the word, who is pleasing to you? That if, in other words, in the beginning, from a physical standpoint, or to ask yourself, is that person pleasing to my eye? Because obviously, no, you don't want to marry someone that is displeasing to you, because you have to live with that person. You have to get up with that person. You have to, you have a very integrated life with that particular person. And when you look at that person should at least be physically pleasing to you. But that should be just part of why you have chosen to marry that individual. That should not have a major weight on the scale of the consideration. Not major, a consideration, an important consideration, but not major. It's not that, well, he's not good looking to me, so I'm not going to talk to him. She's not attractive enough, so I'm not going to talk to her. Well, no, if she's pleasing, okay, she's pleasing, he's pleasing. Let me find out what else, because maybe those other characteristics that we'll talk about in a few moments here will help to beautify him or her, just as we talked in that example that when the young lady asked her new husband, honey, let's get up, lead me into Hajj, man, that obviously had a huge impact upon him, because obviously he was thinking something about what he wanted for the future and about the mother of his children, as opposed to just what, satisfies his own desire. All right. So if we go to the next slide, it says choose with the end in mind. I think all of us have probably read the, or at least heard of, the Stephen Covey book called The 7 Habits of Successful People. And one of the habits is begin with the end in mind. And a lot of Muslim writers and some scholars have, taken that book and tried to, and not tried to, but alhamdulillah, I've written, because many of the points that he makes are very much compatible Islamically and have Islamicized them, if you will. All right. So choose with the end in mind. And we talked about that, right? About Jannah. What do you really want? What do you really want from marriage? That's a good question too, by the way. When I talk with someone about marriage, I ask them, I say, listen, so describe your ideal marriage. Describe your ideal marriage. What does that look like? What does it look like? Describe your ideal spouse. What does he or she look like? And not physically now, but what does that, I mean, that could be a part of the, of the description, but the big picture, with the end in mind, keeping the end in mind. In other words, also the point is you have to ask yourself, well, again, this is the question, isn't it? It's part of that question. Why do I want to get married? Yes, and we know why. I think, well, I shouldn't say we know why people get married for different reasons. So let's make that clear. Not everyone gets married for exactly the same reasons. But inherent in marriage are certain aspects that every human being has to deal with because we're human beings. Okay? So some people get married because simply they want companionship. They want good companionship, someone that they can talk to, someone that they can, bounce ideas off of, someone that they can grow together with. I hope that's really for all of us, that we want someone that we can grow with, that we can grow with in the deen, that we can grow with, as human beings. All right. So you have to choose someone with the end of mind, and over the superficial things like money and social status and all of those kinds of things. And then, of course, you can see this particular hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, that it was described that he was neither loud nor was he coarse. So this is a good example for us that as spouses, when we're looking for a spouse, we don't want somebody looking loud, and we don't want someone that is coarse. And if we have that kind of characteristic, we should be trying and inshallah want to change that particular characteristic, because this was not the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he used to say, he said, the best of you is the one with the best character. And again, we know this hadith. Everybody's heard that over and over and over again. And if we'll look at, let's look at some of these character values, by the way. Yeah, mashallah. Kindness to people. By the way, these are pictures that I think maybe Sister Amara made these pictures. Mashallah. I love them. I love them. Look at the man, helping the lady in the rain, shielding her, with the umbrella. The other people feeding the people. These are tremendous. These are beautiful characters. This is what beautifies a person. Being charitable, having forgiveness. I tell you something. This one is a big deal, because if a person is unwilling to forgive, I don't care how handsome, I don't care how beautiful that person is, you're going to have a problem. And believe me, in marriage, you're going to have problems. In marriage, if you're married more than a day, you're going to have some problems. Okay? So forgiveness, a person's ability to be able to say, sweetheart, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to do that. Please forgive me. Many people have a problem using those words. Many have a problem, really making those words come out of their mouth. Being honest, being truthful. Because, I was speaking to a couple of weeks or so ago, and they had wanted to get married. It was a big problem because they'd been talking way too long. But at any rate, it got to the point where, the sister had no more trust of the young man, and the young man had no more respect for her. A lot of things broke down in between, of course, about all of that. But why? Because on her part, assigning problems or guilt to one person or another, or blame to one person or another. But from her standpoint, on one hand, she felt she was being lied to. He wasn't honest with her. So obviously that broke down the trust. And of course, he felt some similar things, toward her. So honesty is one of those traits, it's one of those characteristics, Patience. How patient are you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how patient are you? I want you to ask yourself that question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how patient am I? You know, could I use a little bit more? If it's 5 or below, you need some work. You need to do some work. What about justice? Adil, being just. One of the names of Allah is Adil, the just one. We have to be just. We also have to be respectful, respecting parents and respecting others. One of the things that I try to find out about, if I have daughters of my own, is like, how do you treat your, but in terms of daughters, how the man, I want to know, how does he treat his parents? How does he feel about his parents? Because if he doesn't treat his parents well, and if they don't feel like he's treating them well, then that's a problem. This is a problem Islamically, and this could be a problem in the relationship. So respect, so you want to find that out somehow or another. How does this person treat and think about their parents? Keeping promises. This is a biggie. Oftentimes when some arguments and problems come up between couples, one of the big things is the promise. You promised me. You said you were going to do such and such. So we shouldn't make promises about things that we can't keep, or we're not sure that we can keep. Oh, should be clear. I can't promise you, but I'll try. I'm not going to promise. But if you do promise, one should keep that promise to the best of his or her ability. And if for some reason they can't do that, they should go to the person and say, I promised that. I know I promised that. Please forgive me, but circumstances have come so that I cannot really fulfill that promise anymore, in the way that perhaps that I had said I would be able to do so in the beginning. And this is important. So listen, these are characteristics. So now we're talking about, again, longevity. We're talking about the end game. We're talking about things that last. These are things that last. If a person is good at 20, inshallah, he's going to be good at 40. And inshallah, he'll be good at 60 and at 80. If he's honest at, 30, he's going to be honest throughout his or her life. And this is important. These things, but the beauty, skin deep, the gray hairs, like I have, except for the ones that I color. And this, the sagging skin, this is the reality of it. But the beauty is in those things that, again, are lasting, those things that really are much more valuable than the physical standpoint. And again, I want to go back because I don't want anyone to leave away and say, oh, no, he thinks that we shouldn't be concerned about how the person looks. No, I'm not saying that at all. You should be. It should be somebody, as we said, should be pleasing to you. Okay? Also, too, one thing that doesn't last, we don't have it listed here, or maybe we do have it listed here, I'm not sure, is money. Probably one of the biggest things that creates arguments in families and couples is money. Arguing over money. I'm going to tell you this little story. This is true too, by the way. This is not a story. This is something that happened not too long ago, maybe 10 years ago. I don't remember whenever the Oprah show was on, right? I think some of you know, everybody knows Michael Jordan, of course. And most of you probably know another famous basketball player named Charles Barkley. All right. So they were on the Oprah Winfrey show. I don't know. Maybe this was the 90s. I'm not quite sure when it was, but a number of years ago. So Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan are friends. They play golf together and whatever, and they joke a lot with one another and tease one another, and et cetera. So somehow or another, the conversation got to around, looks and who looked good and who looked. So Charles Barkley, who was known to say audacious kinds of things, he said, Michael Jordan is ugly. Now, this was on live TV, right? He says, Michael Jordan is ugly. And so Oprah Winfrey was shocked. And, she was like, Charles, how can you say that? How can you say that Michael Jordan is ugly? No, he's not ugly. So here's what Charles Barkley said. He said, look over. When a man is a billionaire, he'll always look pretty to somebody, right? So here's the point he was trying to make. I mean, I think you don't get the point he was making is that yeah, you can have a lot of money and you can be attracted to a person because they got a lot of money. Back to the hadith of the Prophet, remember? A man marries for one of those reasons because of wealth, but it doesn't last. It doesn't always last. If you got a billion, of course, I think that'll be around for a little while, but how many of us have a billion, right? But I think you get the point here. It doesn't last. And the fortunes of man are up and down. And risk, our provisions is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please keep this in mind. Please keep in mind that risk is really with Allah. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah enlarges and he straightens it with whom he pleases. Absolutely. So yes, you could marry that rich guy today, but he could be poor tomorrow. Are you going to divorce him just because circumstances brought about, not that he was foolish and threw it away, but circumstances brought about that now he doesn't have that kind of money anymore? You make the adjustment. And you say, this is the qadr of Allah, and you move on. Because if honesty is still there, if kindness is still there, if patience is still there, if respect for his parents is still there, if he's still loving to you and kind to you, then, this is what matters. And let me tell you about something else when it comes to money. It's more important to have a little money and have barakah with that money, in that money, than have a lot of money and no barakah. You get my point. How many people, and we always hearing about famous stars and acting, these people who, the super wealthy, who have miserable lives. And I'm not saying that just being wealthy makes you be miserable. No, of course not. We have some very wealthy Muslims, alhamdulillah, and alhamdulillah, you should be. The Prophet said we should strive to be independent of others. So no problem with that. But the point is that whatever we have, that it is barakah in that risk. It's barakah in that money. And what I mean by barakah in that money, I mean, we could hold another conversation about that, but that the person who has a little bit of money, a relatively small amount of money, that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts barakah in that money goes a long way. The person who has a lot of money, but no barakah in that money, they always seem to be, a day late and a dollar short. I've always used to say, if a person has $1 million, but is in $1 million, $1,001 in debt, what good is it? What good is this being a so-called millionaire? If he's $1 in debt over that million, he's in big time trouble. But if a person has 100,000, he has no debts, he's living comfortably by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. So this is what's important. And know that everything is from Allah. You put those kinds of things. Now, again, believe me, again, we have the balance here. We have to, particularly for the men, the men have to be able to provide for his family, for his wife and for his children, and take care of them without a doubt. That's his responsibility and his obligation to do so. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. But it doesn't take $1 million to do it. It doesn't take $1 million to do it. So I'm mentioning this only point is that this is one of those temporal things. Money is one of those temporal things. I'm not saying that it's not important. The point of this discussion tonight is to put things in perspective. Alhamdulillah, if you're a lady there, one of our sisters, and you find a man that has good character, good deen, and all these other characteristics, and he has, a pocket full, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Go for it, May Allah bless you. But if you find someone that doesn't have a pocket full, but maybe a half pocket, but it's enough to take care of you. It's enough to give you good shelter, to live in a decent house, in a decent neighborhood, alhamdulillah. And he's ambitious, he works, he's not lazy. then inshallah Allah will prevent. And listen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he will help the married couple in that regard. I don't think this is, I think most of you probably have, I don't want to say more. I think most of us in this conversation, and most of us Muslims, most Muslims, by the way, in America are in that high category in terms of income. But you see, this is kind of maybe the problem. See, this this tends to be the problem. And I hope I'm not getting too far off here. But this kind of tends to be the problem is because we live in this capitalistic society and we live in a materialistic society, then that becomes that becomes the main focus. What kind of money? Anyway, I don't want to get too far in that. That's perhaps another discussion in and of itself, but it is temporary. It is temporary, and I can tell you that. I can tell you that from my own experiences. There have been times, that listen, you're likely to have. Listen, we're going to be tested in life. I'm going to be tested with our money. We're going to test it with our children. I'm not saying all of these things, but we could be tested with one or even more of these things, with our money, with our children, with our health. We're going to be tested with these things. These things are really not lasting. They're temporal. So look for those things in the spouse that will last when the other things, the beauty and the other things don't last. The money does not last. Again, find someone that is attractive to you. Find someone that is pleasing to you, but also find someone who has characteristics that will make that person even more beautiful, even when all of the physical things are no longer there, because they're not likely, they won't be there forever, not forever. So I hope this is, the whole purpose of this conversation, I hope you don't mind, is just to put things in context, to put things in a priority, all right? To give something for us to think about, for you to think about as you move forward, because again, it's about longevity. I want you to have a beautiful marriage. I want it to be good. I want you to be happy. I want you to have rida. I want you to have contentment and peace of mind. Because how many people that are living with handsome men and beautiful women but don't have peace of mind? And I hate to keep going back to my days before I was Muslim, but there are all kinds of these songs, one of them was never make a pretty woman your wife. If you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty woman your wife. I was really kind of crazy song, but I think I understood maybe what the guy was trying to write and say. Now, again, obviously we don't believe that. Allah is beautiful, and Allah loves things that are beautiful. So we are to beautify ourselves. Yeah, so I want to make that clear. We are to beautify ourselves, and Allah loves that which is beautiful. So, alhamdulillah. So we keep that in mind, and we like that. And actually, one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ asked him about that, asked the Prophet ﷺ about that. And the Prophet ﷺ went on to describe, and this is really important, I'll close here, that the Prophet ﷺ went on to describe, because the companion said, well, yeah, the Prophet ﷺ said, the man asked, said, don't we like nice shoes and nice clothes? And basically, there's nothing wrong with that, is it? No, there's nothing wrong with that. What the Prophet ﷺ was trying to get to in this, talking to his companions, is that the things that really take away from the goodness of the human being, from the beauty of the human being. And one of the things that he mentioned, the thing that he most mentioned, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, was arrogance, kibr. Kibr was one that's arrogant. I don't care. I've met beautiful people, very handsome and attractive people, male and female, but arrogant. Wouldn't go 1 mile with one. You shouldn't go 1 mile, not one step. It would kill your relationship and any other relationship that you might have with them and that they will have with others. Do you understand? I hope you're getting this point here. I hope you're getting this point. Believe me, I've met very attractive men and women. I have known them, met them, but the arrogance did not make them look very good. So I will end here. So I'll go back to where we started in that example. The thing that the true story about the young man, the Egyptian man whose father chose his bride He wasn't exactly what she wasn't exactly what he was looking for, from a physical standpoint, but there were other characteristics and traits that he said that beautified her. So just like those traits that can beautify one, there are also characteristics and traits that can make one really ugly. And arrogance is one of the ugliest characteristics. May Allah protect us from kibr. Allahumma ameen. Jazakallah khairan, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam. I hope this has been of some benefit. If I've said of anything of any benefit, it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I've said something incorrect, it is just from me, your brother. So barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.